Linger said, I wanted to give you something precious to boost your confidence, so you wouldn't be laughed at by other fellow disciples when you go out. But these days, Mother has been pushing me to cultivate too hard, and I forgot. Zhang Xiaofan shook his head unconsciously and said, Senior sister, your cultivation is important. You don't need to worry about me anymore. Linger patted his shoulder and smiled. But it's nothing. Everyone knows your abilities. This time, just treat it as an eye-opener. She lowered her voice. If anyone bullies you, you must come to me immediately. HMPH. I'll stand up for you right away. Looking at the warm gaze of his senior sister, Zhang Xiaofan had no doubt about her promise, and even the goodwill in everyone's conversations around him could be felt. But what kind of emotion still surged within him so strongly? What kind of flame burned in the depths of his heart, making it almost impossible for him to breathe? Linger still smiled, patted her favorite junior brother's shoulder, and whispered, Let me tell you, there are so many fun places on Tongshan Peak. Let's sneak off and have some fun, okay? Zhang Xiaofan's vision flickered with her beautiful face, and suddenly he dared not look directly at her. Lowering his head, his heart was filled with sweetness and trouble, teenage thoughts swirling like a whirlpool, and he whispered, Okay, senior sister. Linger smiled, and suddenly heard he Dazi behind her say, Master and mistress are here. Everyone turned around and saw Tia Bai. And so are you walking out from the Hole of Tranquility? Tia Bai wore a sky blue robe, dignified and imposing, though slightly shorter and rounder. He still exuded the aura of a grandmother. As for Su Ru, she immediately caught everyone's attention. Always beautiful, today she wore a light green dress, a jade flower on her head, golden hairpin, eyebrows like distant mountains, skin like condensed white jade, eyes like water, smiling lips. Truly captivating. Song Darren followed behind the couple, his expression as serious as ever. But as soon as the other disciples saw him, strange expressions appeared on their faces. Not quite serious, with a hint of a smile, and behind Song Darren, yellow dog Da Wang and monkey Zihui also followed. Zihui seemed to have gotten used to sitting on Da Wang's back now. When he saw Zhang Xiaofan standing in front, he squeaked a few times, jumped down from Da Wang's back, and ran to Zhang Xiaofan, bouncing onto his shoulders in no time. Chia Bai glanced at the disciples, nodded, and said, Let's go. With that, he waved his right hand, and with a flick of his finger, a crimson light flashed, summoning his famous immortal sword Qiling. Its red brilliance shone brilliantly, truly a treasure of the immortal family. Chia Bai was about to step forward when suddenly his trouser leg was pulled. Turning around, he saw that Da Wang had bitten onto it. The yellow dog, which he had raised since childhood, shook his head and wagged his tail, making a continuous woo-woo sound, biting the trouser leg, staring at Tia Bai with wide eyes. Tia Bai hesitated for a moment, muttered something in his mouth, but still waved his sleeve, rolled up Da Wang, and then floated onto the Qiling sword, following Suru's lead, soaring into the sky, chasing after the red light left by Tia Bai. Su Ru chuckled and shook her head, saying to everyone, You should come too. Then she paused and said to Song Darren, Darren, Xiaofan's cultivation is not enough. You take him with you. Song Darren nodded. Yes. Su Ru nodded, and without any other action, a light green light flashed by, matching her clothes as if it were part of them, carrying her straight up into the sky, following the crimson light left by Tia Bai. Among the disciples of Daju Peak, Wu Dai, Zhang Dali, and Alvi Daxon had not reached the 4th level of cultivation, so they couldn't control magical treasures. Now Song Darren went to Zhang Xiaofan, while he Dazi, Du Bishu, and Tia Linger each took one, and they set off on their own paths. Among them, Tia Linger's magical treasure was the amber vermilion silk. Hidazi's magical treasure was a mountains and rivers brush, which was quite suitable for his usual love of writing. But the most amusing one was undoubtedly the dice magical treasure of 6th senior brother Du Bishu. Once it was activated, a white light flashed, and the 3 dice magnified tenfold in the air, spinning endlessly, with various numbers appearing one after another. In terms of gambling tolls in the world, nothing could surpass this. Fifth senior brother LV Daxon carefully approached to take a closer look and asked with a troubled expression, Sixth senior brother, this thing of yours won't fall from the sky, will it? Du Bishu raised his eyebrows, grinned, and said, Fifth senior brother, why don't we make a bet? If it falls from the sky, you win, and I. LV Daxon spat. Do I dare to win this bet? Du Bishu was taken aback and said, well, that's true. Song Darren walked up to Zhang Xiaofan and smiled, saying, Xiaofan, are you ready? Zhang Xiaofan was about to nod when suddenly the monkey on his shoulder, Zihue, screamed. Both of them were startled, but they saw Zihue pointing to the sky and then pointing at Zhang Xiaofan. Zhang Xiaofan was puzzled for a moment and asked, are you coming too? Zihue immediately grinned, and Zhang Xiaofan hesitated for a moment, looking at Song Darren. After thinking for a moment, Song Darren smiled and said, since Master has taken Da Wang with him, let's take Xiaohui with us too. Zhang Xiaofan felt joyful, nodded, and Zihue was even more excited. Song Darren turned around and said to the others, let's go too. Otherwise, if we're late, Master will scold us. The others agreed, each summoning their magical treasures and setting off. Before leaving, Tianyin approached Zhang Xiaofan and reminded him, be careful, take care of your senior brother. Zhang Xiaofan nodded and replied, I understand, senior sister. Tianyin smiled at him, performed a spell, and a glow emanated from the amber beads, breaking through the air. Song Darren then summoned his own magical treasure, the immortal sword 10 tigers, as a senior disciple of the Dazhu Peak. Although disciples practiced different magical treasures, he cultivated the immortal sword. The 10 tigers' immortal sword was entirely yellow, 4 feet long and 3 fingers wide. Among the immortal swords, it was considered relatively large, but unfortunately, the power of magical treasures couldn't be measured by size alone. Song Darren pulled Zhang Xiaofan up. Zhang Xiaofan had previous experience riding with Tianlinger's amber beads. As he stepped on the 10 tigers, it sank slightly and stabilized. He wasn't as panicked anymore, but the monkey Zihue seemed to know something, holding on to Zhang Xiaofan's head tightly. Song Darren smiled slightly and said, Junior brother, let's go. With that, he pointed his right hand towards the sky with a spell. The 10 tigers' immortal sword emitted a low, sharp sound, and the sword, which had been floating about a foot above the ground, suddenly rose 3 feet. Zhang Xiaofan instinctively grabbed onto Song Darren tighter. At this moment, a mountain wind blew, and the tip of the 10 tigers' sword slowly tilted upwards, reaching about 7/10 of its height, causing Zhang Xiaofan to hold onto Song Darren tightly to prevent himself from falling. Then, with a sharp whistle, the 10 tigers shot straight up into the sky. Zhang Xiaofan stood on the immortal sword, holding onto Song Darren tightly. Although he was nervous, he couldn't bear to close his eyes. The lush green peaks of Dazhu Peak grew further and farther away. Suddenly, everything turned white, enveloped in thick clouds, obscuring everything from view.